the green tribe, the dollar nationalists, they will try to keep people in, so they will like try to impose like digital lockdowns or like digital Berlin walls, so people don't flee to the free side. But I think they will fail because we are like kind of in the West, at least we are on a kind of like decentralization arc, so they will fail. Thinks Balaji.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another new episode of Mtambo podcast. My name is Jakub Mtambo, and today I have a pleasure of talking again to Jakub Simek, a co-founder of Se2 and an author of Wisdom Enterprising. With Jakub, we will discuss his recent article on Orange tribe of tech progressivism versus Green tribe of status quo statism. Jakub, welcome again on Mtambo podcast.
Hi, Duke. It's a pleasure to see you and to talk to you.
Yeah, it's always an honor having you on the show. Let's start with the article you wrote about the political compass rotating by 90 degrees. Maybe can you tell us more about this shift?
Right. So it's like Balajisms Srinivasan, he talks about the realignment on the political compass. He's not alone. But you can imagine like 4 quadrants, or like a kind of imagine a compass, how it kind of looks. And so you have like the traditional distinction between the left and the right, so, or let's say the blue and the reds in the US, kind of roughly speaking. And then on the top you have like the vertical axis is like the authoritarian versus the libertarian axis. So you have the left and right axis, like the horizontal one, and if you imagine some kind of like a cross, right, or a plot, so on the vertical axis you have like the authoritarian versus the libertarian. And so the realignment, it's kind of like the main conflict used to be like the left versus the right, let's say like the kind of more economic, like kind of equality versus like more kind of like focus on merit and exceptionalism and kind of economic freedom. And now it's kind of like realigning 90 degrees, like turning or rotating 90 degrees. And the main kind of conflict, the political conflict, is between the authoritarians and the libertarians. And these could be like both like left and right libertarians, or like more left-leaning and right-leaning libertarians versus the authoritarians, like the left and the right authoritarians. So it's like yeah, you can also think about it differently. It could be something like the network versus the state, or the cloud versus the land, and so like previously, and also like it's good kind of to simplify it or imagine that like on the top left and the top right, so the authoritarians, they're like the socialist and the the nationalist, right? And so, and the bottom quadrants are so it's like the internationalists and the capitalists. So now it's like basically the internationalists, capitalists are like versus the socialists and nationalists. So that's like the kind of conflict. So and also the realignment. So yeah, just like okay. Shortly.
That's fascinating perspective, Jakub. So Balaji believes that the Orange tribe of tech progressivism is clashing with the Green tribe of status quo statism. How do you see this playing out in the political arena?
Yeah, right. So the Orange tribe is like something like maybe in a very close future we would see some kind of like let's say Republicans in the US like signaling more and more towards Bitcoin maximalism, or embracing Bitcoin maximalism. So you have like these network ideologies, like Balaji has these like God, state and network, kind of like 3 leviathans or 3 like big powers in the history. like people before like were all about like believing in God, and God was like the almighty power that let's say would strike you if you sinned or if you did something wrong. And then later on, like let's say in the industrial age, people kind of they always have this kind of God-shaped hole in their heart. So says Balaji also, so they kind of swapped the God for Gov, so it's like the government, so like now the state is like another Leviathan. So let's say people believe in like this very smart detectives. You see all these like detective stories, these thrillers, or some kind of spy stories, like how they are the smart guys who are protecting the world, like from some evil I don't know, powers. So so it's like when the Nietzsche said like God is dead, he kind of meant that the elites in during his time, they stopped believing in God, and they started to believe in Gov, so in the state, government, and so on. Like now it's more like kind of we live in the network age thanks to internet. So it's not just like industrial revolution, but it's like information revolution, and now the network is kind of primary. So also we can say with like if we want to play like some network age Nietzsche's like Nietzschean kind of characters. We would say that the Gov is dead, not God, but the Gov,
Gov,
so
yeah.
like a government. So it kind of doesn't mean that people stopped believing in government, but like you have like elites, like let's say Elon Musk, out executing the government many times. So I don't know if it's like 80% of like the cargo, like the space, basically SpaceX is like sending as many rockets or like the satellites, launching satellites. It's like 80% of all the satellites I think are launched by SpaceX, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So it's like many governments, it's like they're doing more than the governments combined or something like that. And like before SpaceX, like Americans were buying like Russian rockets, which is kind of embarrassing maybe now, like thinking about it, like during the current Ukraine war, it would not be possible. So if they didn't have SpaceX, so like Elon Musk is kind of like trolling on Twitter, like the old establishment. I think that recently he was like trolling Soros.
Yeah, so
like,
just Soros.
yeah. I mean, I didn't have. I was really busy at work, so I didn't have time for like these kind of Twitter fights. But like I just saw like a headline of an article or something, like he's like calling him a threat to civilization.
Yeah.
Which is okay. That's like Elon Musk's antics, but it's really kind of he's like an exceptional entrepreneur, like one of a kind, to have launched like all these companies that are actually quite different from each other, like Tesla and SpaceX. But you could see like, okay, yeah, I mean, the government is not the most powerful actor, and it's like the network is kind of primary. So even like with the Democrats, it's like the woke the woke kind of ideology that is operating on the network, like the like on Twitter. It's like the main kind of battleground, like people fighting for status and doing virtue signaling. So it's the woke ideology is quite different from communism, but it also has some similarities. But the kind of communism was about the redistribution of resources and money between like the labor and capital, and the woke ideology is about redistribution of status. And the main arena is not a factory, but the main arena are social media. So it's like redistribution of status from the oppressors to the oppressed, and then you have like the tech tribe, or like what Scott Alexander calls the great tribe. And actually, we could call this tribe orange tribe because it's like a nice color than green than orange. And basically, it's like like just to combine it with Bitcoin or Bitcoin maximalism kind of, because Bitcoin is like the flag of technology. Like it's kind of uniting the technological progressives. And so, okay, this is like a small tribe, maybe the tech tribe, but it will grow, especially if it connects with the Bitcoin, like the Bitcoin orange. So, yeah, and okay, and so yeah, this orange and okay, orange versus green kind of means that what happens to, like, now it's like the statism is gaining kind of power, so it's like there is also this realignment, or like, so like the nationalism is on the rise, but also like this kind of socialist tendencies are also on the rise, like government spending a lot of money post COVID. And so it's like this is like what he means, what Balaji means between like a green. So it's like the green is like the color green of let's say the greenback or the dollar, versus the orange, like the Bitcoin orange. So it's like from blue and red to like green and orange. That's the realignment. Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting analogy. But Balaj also suggests that the current trend towards the dollarization and central banking crisis may lead to an attempt at Bitcoin seizure. Do you think this will happen soon?
Yes, it might happen actually maybe sooner than what Balaji originally anticipated. It's like it's basically has this interesting kind of mental model that is like history is our future is our past, but it's like and the history repeats itself, but it's like but with opposite outcomes, so like there was this actually a successful attempt at gold seizure by FDR in the 1930s. It was like the executive order 606 something 6000 something 02 or I kind of forgot now the number before I got it right. So but there was actually a successful attempt at seizing gold. So like the people had to like sell the gold to the government, like and they it was like against hoarding. Now we would call it against hodling maybe of gold, so and they sold it to the government. They were like forced to sell it, and the government then sold it at profit, actually quite a lot, like I think almost 70%, if I'm correct.
Wow.
Profit at the international market. So it was like kind of like a tax on people, a tax on gold. It's just like, yeah, it was quite bad. And now what could happen? This could be repeated, but probably with a different outcome, meaning it won't be successful. At least in the West, it won't be as successful, or it will fail completely. At least that's like the prediction from this kind of model of like the history is our future, and the future is our history, but with opposite outcomes.
Yeah, and if it does, Balaji believes also that Bitcoin maximalism will go mainstream and take over the Republican Party, just like the Woks took over the Democratic Party in the last decade.
Yeah, right. So there you have also the purple tribe, which is like the combination between red and blue. So or the purple kind of states where it's like kind of there is not a clear Democratic or Republican majority. You have some kind of small states that are embracing like crypto, for example, like Web3 or DeFi, and like DAOs. There are some DAOs laws. Then there are some Bitcoin mining protection laws. Then there is some kind of like Republicans, I think GOP in Texas. So Republicans, they're like kind of proposing some kind of Bitcoin kind of protection Yeah, so like the digital currency or the bitcoins shall not be seized or shall not be infringed. To hold the right to hold cryptocurrency shall not be infringed, something like that. And so you have Miami, you have like Florida and Miami, or like okay, so the Florida, the state, the governor is like fighting CBDCs. So you have like various, and of course you have El Salvador, but that's outside of the US. But basically there are a lot of not just Republicans. You have like Eric Adams, who is a Democrat, also like receiving salary. I don't know if it was like three salaries, the first three, or if he's still receiving, but he received his salary in Bitcoin. So it's you have also pockets of Democrats like doing these kind of innovative things, but mostly it's Republicans, like the kind of like the more populist party, meaning like, but or the more kind of reactionary against the old establishment party. So they are like embracing Bitcoin, because let's say they are more on a periphery kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating how these two seeming opposition movements can have such a profound impact on the political landscape. But also Balaji suggests that the conflict between the orange and green tribes could lead to two dystopian scenarios: American anarchy and Chinese control. Maybe if you can briefly explain more about these scenarios.
Yeah, so like they're like sci-fi scenarios, and Balaji kind of believes that it's like kind of like the current situation, let's say in San Francisco, like with the drug addiction crisis, or the January 6th and the riots of summer 2020. If you kind of scale it up or like make it like let's say 10x more intensive, you would get kind of closer to this like scenario of American anarchy. Like on previous podcasts, like I mentioned, like one kind of military base or some in the US, like forgot this, I think it was called like Fort Bragg, where it was like an article I read. I think it was, I don't know, Wall Street Journal, or I forgot it, like, but it was kind of like serious medium or like downstream media, but like it was like this kind of serious article explaining like how there were like some mysterious like kind of violent death of like the soldiers, like let's say due to some drug trade, or like some kind of strange things, like when they were like off duty.
Mm-hmm.
I might find the article. I was tweeting about it, and it's kind of just like an illustration of this like American anarchy, because it's like basically the statistics in that article. They were like, you are, I think it was like 80 times more likely to die
Yeah.
in that base, or like within the US, for those soldiers like based there, than abroad, which is kind of like crazy, like, but it was like they were like dozens of unexplained or like violent deaths that were being investigated. And it's just like a small kind of like one points, or like data point or something. But you can see, like, let's say it's like crypto, or before we were talking about social scams, like how something goes vertical then it goes down. But this is something similar like crypto. Sometimes you have the summers, sometimes you have winters, or something goes down, but it kind of stays elevated. So it's like, let's say Bitcoin can go to 60,000, then it can drop to 15, but it's more than it was like years ago. So it's like kind of keeps ups and downs, but kind of it has an upward trend. And so Balaji observes something similar with like kind of the kind of violence in the American cities. Post COVID-19, there were like the violent death kind of went up, and then they went down, but they keep being elevated. So various like crime, let's say in San Francisco, or death, the violent death in Chicago, some kind of like gangs violence. And so the American anarchy, it's kind of like a scenario where Balaji sees like two opposing forces, let's say like the Vokes, or it's like the left libertarians and the Bitcoin maximalists, who are like the right libertarians, and they're opposed to each other. But they also sum. They are the forces that are summing on some kind of axis, and that axis is actually towards decentralization or towards anarchy. So, like, let's say the one side, the Wokes say like we are all equal, and the Bitcoin maximalists say you ain't the boss of me, but these forces might be opposed on some kind of axis, right? But like they are like summing on these like vertical axes, like pulling everything down towards more anarchy and more decentralization, because they're against authorities, so they're against authoritarianism, but also against like any authority. So it's just like a kind of leading towards more anarchy. So Balaji is more like kind of being a pragmatic or centrist. So he sees like that there are some kind of disadvantages, even like in the maximalism. If you have too much sympathy and too much kind of equality, you get like the San Francisco scenario where there is like street crime and it's not controlled because like it's kind of like strange ideology, like this woke ideology. Then if it's like, but if you have an absence of sympathy, you would get something like Russia in the 90s, like the people were totally like not trusting each other. It's also not good. But if you have like too much, let's say Bitcoin maximalism, or like kind of like libertarianism, you might end up like with kind of people who are like against the division of labor, because they want to rely also just on themselves. So they are also kind of losing trust, or they're just trusting themselves. So it's then you end up in a kind of like paradoxical state where you are against capitalism because I don't know, you are getting your own water,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just like preparing everything on your own. It's kind of like that's also not good, but also the absence of sovereignty is not good. It's like the Davos man, or like
Mm-hmm.
eating the bugs and living in the pod and
Yeah.
owning nothing, and being happy. So that's another like kind of not maybe good scenario, but like just like total sovereignty is also like just not viable, because we live in society, we live in a tribe, or in a kind of we have a community to take care of. And then of course like now Balaji also has like the CCP versus NYT versus BTC, like a
Mm-hmm.
triangle which kind of maps on the political compass. So like the CCP is kind of the paradoxical, like the uh, kind of synthesis of like communist capital. Then NYT is like the woke capital. So it's like this synergy or synthesis, Hegelian synthesis between like the wokes and the capitalism. So we have these woke corporations, which is kind of like a bit strange, but these things happens. These left-right fusions happen. And then you have like crypto capital, which is also kind of like interesting phenomenon. So yeah, so okay, you have these like these forces, or these three forces, and these kind of quadrants. And now the realignment also in the blue tribe, or in like blue America, is from woke to statism. So now people will be just like kind of trusting or being like dollar nationalists. They
Yeah.
will be believing in dollar, and actually, and then they will, and now the red tribe will be like Bitcoin maximalists, because they will be like the Bitcoin is Balaji even, like it's just like they took, I don't know, all these adverts, like the Vokes kind of like trying to piss off the other side. So they're like, I don't know, making these woke adverts like claiming this beer, I don't know. So they took or this kind of
Mm-hmm.
culture, like cultural appropriation kind of thing. It's just just to be funny. So like I don't know, you know, the conservatives or the Republicans, they might be like, they took our beer, they took our, I don't know, grill, they took our trucks, you know, like the
Yeah.
trucks are woke, the beer is woke. I don't know, the grilling, or you can just like, I don't know, it's just like you have this plant-based meat or something.
Yeah.
So but Bitcoin is still there, you know. So it's just like they took everything, but Bitcoin is
Bitcoin is still
the
there.
only thing that remains. The Bitcoin is still there. And the
Mm.
same thing will happen actually with dollar until the dollar crashes. So, you know, it's just like that's kind of the only thing that unites America. And also like the Blue Tribe, you know, they're quite competitive and quite like zero sum, these progressives. So they might be like kind of hiding behind some kind of like for universalism, Balaji would call it, you know, like they are for like universal values, like kind of equality, equity, and this and that. But like often it's just like a cover for like particularism of like for their own network and their tribe. So when they say like we should be all equal, but they what they mean is like that. It's like they should be in charge, you know, they should have the root access. So it's like, oh, we need to make sure that, let's say, the AI is safe, and the AI is like properly, I don't know, it's like being ethical, like, you know, ethical AI. So but it kind of means that they should have the root access, and like their tribes should have the root access, and it should be centralized. So they have like someone at OpenAI or someone at Twitter who is like canceling people and who is like moderating. So it's like, okay, they're like for universal values of tolerance or something, but it's usually tolerance, like everybody should tolerate them, but they do, they don't need to tolerate anyone because like they should be in charge. It's like their kind of ideology. So yeah, so at the end it will be dollar versus Bitcoin. At least
Mm.
that's what Balaji says.
Okay, that's a very interesting perspectives. Jakub, as we wind up this episode, do you see a clash between the orange and green tribes as inevitable?
Well, I mean, yeah, probably yes, because it doesn't, it wouldn't need to be like that, I guess. We, it could be kind of like very gradual, you know, like let's say the same way as you back in 2000, the year 2000, people didn't spend much time online, you know, but now some people spend like majority of their day online in the cloud. So it could be kind of like very gradual and slow. Like, so people could have like, let's say 1% or 5% or 10% of their net worth in or their savings, let's say in crypto like Bitcoin, and the majority in dollars or in some kind of other fiat which you need to pay your bills, you know, and which is kind of at least used to be like stable at least in a short term and depreciating in the long term. But now you see this high inflation and all these like energy crises, economic crisis, real estate, like the commercial real estate crisis, and all these like other crises in the US, but also in other countries. And I think, okay, it will come to Europe as well. Like one thing that Balaji doesn't mention, but I think it will be kind of obvious soon, and it's just like some weak signals now. It's the legacy automakers, so the legacy car companies. I think they will face another crisis, and there are like many others, like the student debt, the debt ceiling, de-dollarization, as you mentioned, and all these kind of like crises. So you can say we live in a poly crisis or meta crisis or perma crisis, as you want to call it. You know, like a permanent or like poly, like meaning like many crises together, or meta. So it means like there are some like common drivers or like generator functions or of these crises. uh, I don't know, some kind of, yeah, like the too much centralization produces fragility, and so things break, and they and as Balaji says, like in case of emergency, there is like this decentralization button. You press it, and when the old system doesn't work, you decentralize. So yeah, I guess there will be this clash because of this current fiat crisis, what Balaji calls the fiat crisis. So because people want to, in the West, they will kind of impose some kind of like maybe soft capital controls, but like burning all these crypto to fiat bridges is kind of a way how to impose capital controls. Like, so they don't want people to get into the outside money, like so-called outside money, as Arthur Hayes calls them. It's the money where you don't have a counterparty risk, or where you don't have the where your money is not like liabilities on someone else balance sheet, so it's like your assets, but let's say they are parked at Coinbase, so there are liabilities on the other side. Or even if you hold stocks or something, it's always, if it's just but he says like, okay, there is something like real estate, but okay, then if it's in a wrong jurisdiction, you might get in trouble if it's not like a crypto friendly jurisdiction. But you have like gold, real estate, Bitcoin, so these kind of assets which are like the outside money. So I think you can also like, the inside money, like the money that will fight the outside money somehow. So, or the green tribe, the dollar nationalists, they will try to keep people in. So they will like try to impose like digital lockdowns or like digital Berlin walls, so people don't flee to the free side. But I think they will fail, because we are like kind of in the West, at least, we are on a kind of like decentralization arc, so they will fail. Thanks, Balaji.
Yeah, Jakub, it's fascinating to see how the political landscape is shifting, but I agree with you. This alignment is creating strange bedfellows and alliances between old freedom of speech leftists, classical laborers, technological progressive libertarians, and conservative people on the right. Thank you, Jakub, for your time. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Duke. It was a pleasure talking to you, and talk to you soon.
Well, thank you too. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation with Jakub Simek. Please don't forget to subscribe. Give this episode a thumbs up, and be sure to come back next week for another episode. Until then, this is Jakub Mtambo, and don't forget to do good always.